Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled, What If Joe Montana Left Notre Dame and Became a Legend Somewhere Else? What if I told you the most clutch quarterback in football history didn't have his moment at Notre Dame? Not he struggled early, not he had to earn it. I mean, he never gets a starting job, never leads a comeback, never becomes Joe Montana at Notre Dame. And if that happens, this isn't just a Notre Dame story. This is the story where the entire idea of a clutch quarterback might never exist the way we remember it. Because if Joe Montana doesn't become Joe Montana at Notre Dame, then somebody else gets the legend, and college football and the NFL will never look the same again. But first, let's set the table for the moment that almost happened. Here's what gets lost to time. Joe Montana wasn't supposed to be the guy. At Notre Dame in the late 70s, he's lower in the depth chart due to injuries and illness. There's a very realistic version of the alternate timeline where he never climbs the chart, never gets the comeback opportunities, and never builds that reputation. And without those moments, Montana isn't Montana. Now you may be thinking, come on, great players always find a way. Sometimes they do, but college football history is full of guys who didn't. Guys who are one coaching decision, one injury, one bad break away from being forgotten. So let's just change one thing, and that sets the table for the divergence. Montana never starts. In this alternate timeline, Notre Dame sticks with stability. They go with the safer quarterback, the system guy, the coach's guy. And Montana, he sits and sits and sits, and eventually he leaves. No dramatic fallout, no scandal, just a quiet realization. I'm never getting my chance here. So he transfers closer to home to a blue collar program that fits him better, anyways, Pittsburgh. And this is where everything changes. And that sets the table for Notre Dame without Montana. Let's start with Notre Dame, because this is where things could easily get wrong. Notre Dame doesn't collapse. They don't have a disaster 4-7 season. They don't disappear. They're still good. They win games. They stay ranked. They have respect. But here's the difference. They're not legendary. No iconic comebacks. No how did he do that moments. No mythology. Just solid football. And for Notre Dame, that's a massive drop. Because Notre Dame isn't just built on wins, it's built on moments. And without Montana, some of those moments never happen. And that sets the table to Pittsburgh, where the legend moves. Now we move to the Pitt Panthers. And this is where the story goes from interesting to powerful. Because Joe Montana doesn't just play at Pitt, he fits. This is a tougher program, a colder environment, a city that respects grit over flash. And Montana thrives. At first, he's just another transfer, but then it starts a late drive, a fourth quarter comeback, a game no one expected Pitt to win. And suddenly, people start noticing. And that sets the table for the defining moment. Every legend has a moment. In our timeline, it's at Notre Dame. In this alternate timeline, it's at Pittsburgh. Picture it. Late season, cold, wind cutting through the stadium. Pitt is down 2 scores against a top 5 team. Montana looks overmatched all game. Then something flips. Drive 1, drive 2, fourth down conversions, perfect throws under pressure, and suddenly they're in it. The final drive, the clock's ticking. Montana takes them down the length of the field. Touchdown, Pitt wins. And the broadcast says it. Who is this kid? That's the moment. That's where Joe Montana is born in this alternate universe. It just doesn't happen to be at Notre Dame. And that sets the table for the college football ripples. Now the ripple effects start. Pitt becomes dangerous, not just good. They've got a quarterback who doesn't panic, doesn't fold, and wins late. And suddenly the power balance changes. Notre Dame is still respected, but Pitt has the magic. Recruits notice, media notices, and now instead of Notre Dame owning the clutch mystique, Pittsburgh does. And that sets the table for the NFL changes. And this is the biggest layer, the one that turns this from a college football story into a football story. Because Joe Montana still goes to the NFL, but not in the same way. He has a different exposure, different narrative, and different expectations, and maybe a different destination. And if that happens, there's a lot of what ifs, such as what happens to the 49ers. Do they still find him? Do they still build around him? Does Bill Walsh still become Bill Walsh without Montana running his system perfectly? Or does the entire rise of the 49ers stall? Now think larger. If Joe Montana's legacy changes or weakens, who takes that spot? Is it Dan Marino? Does John Elway become the unquestioned standard? Does the idea of a clutch quarterback even look the same? Because Montana didn't just win games, he defined what winning under pressure looked like. And if that definition changes, football changes with it. And that sets the table for our closing section on what was really lost. So no, Notre Dame doesn't collapse. Pittsburgh doesn't suddenly become Alabama. The NFL doesn't disappear, but something subtle and something powerful is different. Because the legend still exists, it just lives somewhere else. And that changes who we remember, what we value, and how we define greatness. All because one quarterback never got his chance at Notre Dame. And if you enjoy these off the timeline college football alternate history scenarios where one decision reshapes everything, hit like, subscribe, and let me know. What's another moment in college football history that almost went differently? Because sometimes the big changes come from the stories that almost never happened.